We are faced in the world today, not just in the nation of Trinidad and Tobago. Our republic is in a state of confusion right now because of a sort of impoverished type of race relation. But this concept of race relation has its inception in the hearts of men. That's where it really begins. I've said repeatedly, the heart of the human problem is the problem of the human heart. Jesus in St. Mark's Gospel, chapter 7, he said, it's not what goes in that makes us corrupt and polluted, but he says actually what comes out from the heart. And part of what comes out of the heart today, unfortunately, is a spirit of racism. I want to tell you about an account that we mostly are familiar with. It's found in the book of St. John's Gospel, chapter 4. It's the story of Jesus as he met with the Samaritan woman. Many of us may not be aware that the Samaritans had absolutely nothing to do with the Jews. You're talking about racism, that was the height of racism. They would not even as much, that's the Jews, not as much as pass through any of the city of the Samaritans. To speak with a Samaritan was considered to be something obnoxious. And here it is, we have the background of this story is that, when the Assyrian captivity took place, and the king of the Assyrians, he took all, as many as possible, I should think, of the Jews out from the city of Samaria, which was then the capital of Israel. And he repopulated, that's right, he repopulated the Samaritan city with foreigners. These foreigners intermarried with the Jews. And the Jews hated the Samaritans because the Samaritans considered themselves to be Jews. And here it is that Jesus Christ, he comes onto the scene. And now he's having a literal conversation with this Samaritan woman. Not even a Samaritan, but a Samaritan woman to boot. So I want to say three things about racism. Apart from the fact that it is found in the heart of men, and it's an attitude, it's a spirit. An attitude is a predisposition to act. It is something that we learn. But as we think about how do we then deal with racism, is always my view. Racism will always be with us. But how then do we develop a spirit whereby we can be considered to be anti-racist? Well, it has to be modeled. And Jesus is our perfect example. I want to suggest, number one, that to deal with racism, as we talk about modeling it, it starts with the individual. Jesus is the perfect model. He modeled what it meant to have reconciliation as far as racism is concerned. He stepped out of the whole confusion of racism. I was so prevalent at that time. And as an individual, he took the initiative of going to this woman and to have a conversation. As a matter of fact, as you read a passage, he said he needed to go through Samaria, which was unheard of. So sometimes when we want to treat with spirits and attitudes that are disconnecting us and bringing discord and disharmony, you have to step out. It's not just sitting and listening to what is being said and, talking and having the rhetoric. It is what we do in our hearts. The second thing, if we have to bring an end to racism, it must not only be an individual move, but it's something that must be. It must start with the individual, but it must also be intentional. By intentionality, it means you have to step beyond the gaps that limit us. The knowledge gap, the gap of contradiction, for instance, where it was a contradiction for him to actually speak with a woman who was a Samaritan. He was very intentional. He knew exactly what he was doing, in spite of what the reactions of those around him could have been. You and I must be very intentional as individuals as we move towards bringing a healing effect to this racism that is so prevalent around the world and in our country at this time. The final thing I want to suggest is it must not only start with the individual, it must not only be intentional, but I want to suggest it must be interrelational. Be careful now and understand that Jesus, even though he was intentional, Even his own couldn't understand. They were perplexed, they were bewildered. How come you, being a Jew, will speak to a woman who is a Samaritan? Well, it has to go both ways. He reached out to the woman began to reach out to him. The disciples still had that mindset. And until we change our thoughts, we cannot change our world. My brother, my sister, you know, Jesus Christ, even as he used one time a lesson where he tried to teach us who's our neighbors. You know what he said? He didn't see the priest. He didn't see the man who was the religious man reaching out to that person that was broken. But he used the analogy of the good Samaritan. You know how far-reaching that could be?